I want to check my balance. The bank manager laughed until a waitress recognized the sheikh. Comment what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10 and let me know which city you're watching from. I really want to know if you liked my story and get to know you better. So please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The Tuesday morning in New York City awoke with the usual chaos of the financial district. Amidst the incessant coming and going of hurried executives and the deafening noise of traffic, the National Union Bank branch was preparing for another routine day. The air conditioning fought against the lingering chill of March that still announced itself intensely, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee prepared by Emily Carter spread through the environment, mingling with the smell of paper and anxiety that always hung over the place. Emily was adjusting the final details of the coffee counter when she saw a man approach the entrance. Something about him immediately caught her attention. It wasn't his simple clothes, a navy blue polo shirt and twill pants that any ordinary person would wear, but the way he walked. There was a natural elegance in his movements, a quiet confidence that contrasted with the simplicity of his attire. His dark brown hair was slightly disheveled by the wind, and as he passed by her, Emily caught a deep, almost melancholic gaze that made her pause for a moment. Khalil Al-Mansouri looked around the branch with genuine curiosity. 2 weeks in the United States had not been enough for him to completely get used to the warm and sometimes chaotic way business was conducted here. Coming from a world where every meeting was protocol-driven and every word carefully weighed, the American spontaneity fascinated and disconcerted him in equal measure. He had deliberately chosen to dress discreetly that day. After years of being instantly recognized in Dubai, London, and New York, there was something liberating about being able to walk anonymously through the streets of the city. As he approached the service desk, Khalil was greeted by Mark Thompson, a 42-year-old man whose body language already showed an assessment being made. Mark observed the young man before him with the trained eyes of someone who had spent decades categorizing clients by their appearance, and what he saw did not impress him. Simple clothes, no visible brand name watch, none of the obvious signs of wealth he was used to identifying in important clients. "Good morning," said Khalil with a polite smile, his voice carrying a slight foreign accent that Mark interpreted as another sign that he was dealing with an ordinary client, perhaps a tourist with a basic account. "I would like to check my account balance and discuss some investment options." Mark leaned back in his chair, assuming a posture that made it clear he considered the conversation a formality. Sure. What would be the amount you're thinking of investing, so I can direct you to the appropriate product?" "Initially, I was considering something around $50 million, Khalil replied, with the same naturalness as someone talking about the weather. The silence that followed was broken by Mark's sarcastic laughter. It wasn't a discreet laugh. It was the kind of loud, embarrassing laugh that made other people in the branch turn their heads to see what was happening. $50 million? Kid, are you sure you didn't mix up your zeros there?" Mark's voice carried a condescension that cut through the air like a blade. "Look, maybe it's better for you to talk to one of our interns about a basic checking account, or maybe a prepaid card would be more suitable for your profile." Khalil felt the flush rise up his neck. It wasn't the first time his simple appearance had caused misunderstandings, but public humiliation was something his privileged upbringing had not prepared him to face. He could feel the curious stares of the other employees and clients, some whispering among themselves, others trying to hide smirks. It was at that moment that Emily, who had witnessed the whole scene while organizing cups, felt her stomach clench. She recognized that man. The memory hit her like a lightning bolt. 2 years ago at the Plaza Hotel, she had served coffee during a high-level meeting between international investors and representatives of the U.S. government. Khalil Al-Mansouri was there, speaking fluently about billion-dollar acquisitions in agribusiness with the same calm voice that was now trying to maintain its dignity in the face of public humiliation. Without hesitation, Emily left her station and walked determinedly towards Mark's desk. Her approach was noticed by the manager, who initially ignored her, but she persisted, leaning in to whisper in his ear. "Mark, you need to check the international preferred client lists now." Her voice was firm, charged with an urgency that made the manager frown. "Emily, you're meddling where you're not wanted. Go back to your coffee and let me handle the important clients," Mark replied with irritation, not bothering to lower his voice. "That's Khalil Al-Mansouri," she continued, ignoring his harsh tone. "Heir to Al-Mansouri Holdings. If you don't believe me, check the database now." The change on Mark's face was instantaneous. The color drained from his cheeks as he typed frantically on the computer. Khalil, who had perfectly heard the whispered exchange, looked at Emily with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. She had recognized him. Amidst all that embarrassment, one person had truly seen him. What followed was a scramble that would have been comical if it weren't so revealing of human nature. Within minutes, the regional director was summoned, a VIP room was hastily prepared, and the same branch that moments before had witnessed Khalil's humiliation now bowed before him with an almost exaggerated reverence. Throughout the confusion, Khalil kept his eyes on Emily. She had returned to her post, continuing her work as if nothing had happened, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she avoided looking in the direction of the commotion she had helped create. There was something about her that intrigued him deeply, not just the sharp intelligence that had made her recognize him when others couldn't, but the dignity with which she had handled the whole situation. When he was finally escorted to the VIP room, Khalil asked a question that surprised everyone present. "I would like the young lady who serves the coffee to participate in the meeting as a protocol assistant. She has demonstrated knowledge of international relations that could be valuable." The raised eyebrows and disapproving glances did not go unnoticed, but no one was in a position to question the wishes of a client of that caliber. Emily was called, and when she entered the room, Khalil could finally observe her without the distractions of the outside environment. She was beautiful, but not in the obvious way he was used to finding in his social circle. Her beauty was natural, without artifice, and there was a strength in her gaze that spoke of battles fought and victories won with her own hands. When she sat down, maintaining an impeccable professional posture, Khalil noticed that her hands, though cared for, bore the marks of someone who knew hard work. During the meeting, Emily remained silent, taking notes and serving coffee when necessary. But Khalil noticed how her eyes lit up when certain economic issues were discussed, how she instinctively leaned forward when topics about international trade were addressed. There was a voracious intelligence there, a thirst for knowledge that seemed to be constantly analyzing and processing information. When the meeting ended and the last executives left the room, Khalil remained. Emily was organizing the papers when he said in a low voice, "Thank you." She stopped what she was doing and looked at him directly. "You're welcome." It was just the right thing to do. "It wasn't just right," he replied, taking a step closer. "It was brave. You risked your position here to defend someone you didn't know." "I do know you," she said simply. "I served you coffee 2 years ago at the plaza. You were discussing investments in port infrastructure." Khalil was genuinely surprised. "You remember that?" "I remember a lot of things," Emily replied, a small smile touching the corners of her mouth. It was part of my job to pay attention. In that moment, something changed in the air between them. Khalil found himself studying her face, the way she held her chin slightly raised even when she clearly felt out of her element, the intelligence that shone in her dark eyes. Emily, in turn, allowed herself to really look at him. noticing how his presence filled the room, how there was a deep loneliness behind all that apparent confidence. "What's your full name?" Khalil asked. "Emily Carter," she answered, hesitating before adding, "I've been working here for 3 years, but I studied international relations." "Ah," he said, and there was an understanding in his voice that made Emily's heart race. "So, you really understood everything that was discussed here today?" "I did," she confirmed, lifting her chin a little higher. "And I also understood that you didn't need to thank me publicly. That's going to cause problems for me here." Khalil felt a pang of guilt. In his world, gestures of recognition were natural, expected. He hadn't considered the repercussions his action could have on her. "Can I do anything to—" "You don't have to," Emily interrupted him. "I know how to take care of myself. I always have." And it was in that simple statement, in that assertion of independence, that Khalil al-Mansouri, heir to billions and accustomed to having all his wishes met immediately, found himself completely fascinated by a bank barista who had just made it clear that she didn't need his protection or his money. When he left the branch that day, Khalil took with him something he hadn't expected to find in New York: the image of a woman who had surprised him in every way, and the unsettling certainty that he needed to see her again. 3 days had passed since the incident at the branch, and Emily felt the weight of whispering glances following her every move. Her co-workers oscillated between malicious curiosity and poorly disguised envy, while Mark avoided her completely, still embarrassed by the awkward situation he had created. She tried to maintain a normal routine, serving coffee and keeping the counter impeccable, but she knew something had irreversibly changed in that environment. That's why she wasn't completely surprised when, on Thursday morning, she received a call from the regional director requesting her presence in his office. Henry Montgomery was a 58-year-old man, known for his corporate coolness and the direct way he conducted business. When Emily entered his office, he was standing behind his desk with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "Sit down, Emily," he said, indicating the chair in front of his desk. "We received an interesting request this morning. Mr. Al-Mansouri has specifically asked that you accompany him in his upcoming meetings here at the bank as an international protocol assistant. Apparently, he was impressed with your knowledge of foreign trade." Emily felt her stomach clench. She'd expected negative consequences, not a temporary promotion that would surely fuel even more malicious comments. "Mr. Montgomery, It's a unique opportunity," he interrupted her. "Al-Mansouri potentially represents the largest corporate account this branch has ever managed. If he is satisfied with your service, we are not going to question it. You will receive a functional bonus and be relieved of your other responsibilities while he is conducting business here." When she left the director's office, Emily faced the accusatory gazes of at least 6 colleagues who had clearly tried to listen to the conversation through the door. Jessica, the customer service supervisor, was the first to approach. "Wow, Emily, lucky you, huh?" she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Suddenly you're an assistant to a millionaire. You must have done something really special to impress him so much." The insinuating tone made Emily clench her fists, but she kept her voice calm. "I did my job, Jessica. The same thing I've been doing here for 3 years. "Oh, sure," Jessica laughed. "Serving coffee turned into international relations expertise overnight. What a talent." The snickers of the other female employees echoed through the room, and Emily felt her face burn. She knew that any defense she made would be interpreted as confirmation of the insinuations. Instead, she returned to her work, ignoring the whispers that followed her for the rest of the day. On Friday, Khalil returned to the branch. Emily saw him enter and felt a confusing mixture of anxiety and something she didn't want to name. He was more formal this time, wearing a dark suit that had clearly been custom-made, and there was something in his posture that showed he was fully embracing his public identity. When his eyes met hers across the lobby, he smiled, a genuine smile that did something strange in her stomach. The meeting was different from the previous one. Khalil was discussing the acquisition of a logistics company with potential for international expansion, and Emily found herself genuinely fascinated by the complexities of the business. When one of the consultants mentioned difficulties with port regulations, she couldn't help herself. "Excuse me," she said, gently interrupting the conversation, "but if the goal is to expedite the transit of goods for export, it might be interesting to consider partnering with agricultural cooperatives. They have preferential agreements with the IRS that could reduce clearance time by up to 40%. The silence that followed made Emily realize she had spoken out of turn. She was there as an assistant, not a consultant. She began to shrink back, but Khalil leaned forward, clearly interested. "Explain that idea further," he said, completely ignoring the surprised looks of the other men in the room. For 20 minutes, Emily found herself at the center of a complex technical discussion, presenting solutions she had studied in university and observed during her years at the Plaza Hotel. Her mind worked quickly, connecting information and presenting alternatives that had clearly not occurred to the expensive consultants sitting around the table. When the meeting ended, Khalil remained in the room as the others left. "Where did you learn all this?" he asked as soon as they were alone. "In college and by observing," Emily replied, still processing the fact that she had just given an impromptu presentation to one of the most powerful businessmen in the world. When you work serving important people, you learn to pay attention to everything. "You're wasting your talent here," Khalil said, with a frankness that surprised her. Emily felt a sting of defensiveness. "I'm not wasting anything. I'm building my life my way, in my own time." Khalil realized he had touched a raw nerve. "I didn't mean that as a criticism. I meant that you are capable of so much more than this place allows you to show." There was something in the way he spoke, a sincerity that cut through all her carefully constructed defenses. Emily found herself really looking at him, noticing details she had ignored before. The way he gestured when he was focused, how there was a persistent melancholy in his eyes, even when he smiled. "Why haven't you gotten married yet?" The question slipped out before she could censor herself, and she felt her face burn immediately. "I'm sorry, that was inappropriate." "It wasn't," Khalil said softly. "It's a fair question. The honest answer is that I've never found someone who saw me beyond the money." The brutal simplicity of the answer made something tighten in Emily's chest. "That must be very lonely." "It is," he admitted. "But you understand loneliness, don't you? I saw how people treat you here, as if the fact that I recognized your intelligence was some kind of betrayal of this place's unwritten rules." Emily was surprised by the accuracy of his observation. "Yes, I understand, but I've learned to deal with it." "You shouldn't have to," Khalil said, and there was an intensity in his voice that made Emily look at him more closely. "People like us. We have to fight twice as hard to prove we deserve to be where we are." "People like us," she repeated, arching an eyebrow. "Outsiders," he explained. "Me because of my nationality and wealth, you because of your background, both of us always having to prove we belong in the spaces we occupy." The comparison was absurd. He was a billionaire, she was a barista, but Emily understood what he meant. They both carried the weight of always being watched, always judged by different standards than those applied to others. "Would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow?" The question came so naturally that it took a moment for Emily to fully process what had been said. I can't," she replied instinctively. "Why?" It was a simple question, but Emily found herself struggling to find an answer that made sense. Because he was too rich? Because she didn't want to be seen as a gold digger? Because the attraction she felt for him scared her more than anything she had ever experienced. Because we're from completely different worlds, she said finally. We are, Khalil agreed. But we just spent the last 40 minutes talking as if we were college classmates. Different universes, but minds that connect. Emily felt her heart race. There was something in the way he spoke about connection that echoed exactly what she had felt during the meeting. As if, for the first time in years, someone truly saw and appreciated not just her appearance, but her mind. One dinner, she said slowly. As friends. As two intelligent people who would like to continue an interesting conversation, Khalil corrected with a smile that made Emily wonder if she was making the biggest mistake or the best decision of her life. When he left the branch that day, Emily stood in the empty room for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. She had agreed to have dinner with Khalil al-Mansouri. Rationality screamed that it was madness, that she was exposing herself to complications that could destroy the stability she had fought so hard for. But a deeper part of her, a part that had been dormant during years of focusing solely on survival and progress, whispered that maybe, just maybe, some opportunities were worth the risk. Outside, Khalil got into his car with a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Anticipation. For the first time since arriving in the US, he wasn't thinking about business, acquisitions, or family responsibilities. He was thinking about a woman who had challenged him intellectually, who showed no impression with his wealth, and who made him feel seen in a way he had forgotten was possible. Neither of them imagined that, a few blocks away, someone had photographed Khalil leaving the branch and was already preparing the first seeds of the scandal that would soon consume both their lives. The dinner took place at the Pinnacle Lounge, a restaurant Khalil had chosen for its panoramic view of New York City and the relative privacy it offered. Emily arrived promptly at 8 in the evening. Wearing a simple navy blue dress she had bought especially for the occasion, an extravagance her tight budget protested, but that her heart had insisted was necessary. When the maitre d' led her to the table, she found Khalil already waiting, watching the city through the window with a thoughtful expression that turned into a genuine smile when he saw her approach. "You look beautiful," he said, standing up to pull out her chair. The compliment didn't sound like an empty courtesy, but like a sincere observation that made Emily feel more beautiful than she had felt in years. The conversation flowed with a naturalness that surprised them both. Khalil spoke of his education in England and France, of the pressure of carrying the weight of family expectations that spanned generations. Emily shared stories of her childhood in the Bronx, of how she studied under the streetlight when the power was cut, of how her mother worked 16 hours a day to ensure she could attend university. "Your mother must be very proud," Khalil said when she finished telling him about her graduation. "She doesn't really understand what I do," Emily admitted with a wistful smile. For her, success is a steady job with benefits. The idea that I want to open my own company makes her nervous. "And your father?" The silence that followed was eloquent. Khalil didn't press, but Emily found herself wanting to answer. "He left when I was 12. Said he couldn't handle the pressure of supporting a family on a bus driver's salary anymore. My mother never spoke ill of him in front of me, but I saw how she cried when she thought I wasn't looking." Khalil reached his hand across the table, gently touching hers. "I'm sorry." "You don't have to be," Emily said, but she didn't pull her hand away. "It taught me that I can't depend on anyone but myself. It was a valuable lesson. It can also be a prison," Khalil observed softly. "I know what it's like to build walls so high that not even the right people can climb them." There was something in the way he spoke that suggested deep personal experience. Emily found herself studying his face, noticing the subtle lines around his eyes that spoke of worries money couldn't solve. During dessert, Khalil received a call that made him frown. He apologized and answered quickly, speaking in Arabic with a voice that gradually grew more tense. When he hung up, there was a shadow in his expression that wasn't there before. "Trouble?" Emily asked. "My family," he said simply. "Apparently my stay in the States is lasting longer than they consider appropriate for someone in my position." "And what is your position, exactly?" The question slipped out before Emily could censor herself. Khalil sighed. "Sole heir to an empire built over 4 generations, future leader of a company that employs tens of thousands of people, and according to my father, future husband of a political ally's daughter who will consolidate our influence in the region." Emily's blood ran cold. "You're engaged?" "Not officially," Khalil said quickly, "but there are understandings, agreements that were made without my consultation, but which are considered unquestionable." Emily felt a mixture of disappointment and anger that surprised her with its intensity. "Then what are you doing here? With me? Trying to find out who I am when I'm not representing the interests of other people?" Khalil answered with brutal honesty. "For the first time in my life, I'm in a place where I can just be myself. And you see me as a person, not a business opportunity or a strategic alliance." The sincerity in his voice completely disarmed Emily's irritation. She could see the internal struggle in his eyes, the conflict between duty and desire that she recognized because she faced a different version of the same battle every day. "This can't end well," she said finally, her voice softer than she intended. "Why not?" "Because you'll go back to your world and I'll stay in mine. Because your family would never accept someone like me, and mine would never understand someone like you. Because we're playing with fire and we're going to get burned." Khalil leaned forward. "And what if it's worth getting burned?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Emily could feel her heart beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. There was something in Khalil's gaze that made her want to believe that maybe, just maybe, some things were worth the risk. When they left the restaurant, Khalil insisted on taking her home. The journey to the Bronx was made in a silence heavy with unresolved tension. Emily watched the landscape gradually change, from the elegant buildings of downtown to the simpler constructions of the outer borough, and wondered what Khalil was thinking as he saw the stark difference between their worlds. "You can stop here," she said when they reached her street. "Are you sure?" "I am," she replied, but remained in the car for a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you for dinner. It was special." "For me too," Khalil said, and there was an intensity in his voice that made Emily look directly into his eyes. The moment stretched, charged with unexplored possibilities. Emily could feel the magnetic attraction between them, the temptation to lean closer, to find out if his lips were as soft as they seemed. But reason prevailed, and she opened the car door. "Good night, Khalil." "Good night, Emily." She walked to her house without looking back, but she could feel his eyes following her every step. Only when she heard the engine driving away did she allow herself to sigh and admit to herself how much she had wished that moment in the car had ended differently. Inside the house, her mother, Maria, was watching television in the small living room. At 52, she bore on her face and calloused hands the mark of a life of hard work and constant sacrifice. "You're home late today," she observed without taking her eyes off the screen. "I went out for dinner," Emily replied, trying to sound casual. "With whom?" The simple question made Emily hesitate. How could she explain to her mother that she had dined with an Arab billionaire who was messing with all her carefully laid plans? "With a friend from work." Maria finally looked at her daughter. noticing the new dress and the different sparkle in her eyes. What kind of friend buys a new dress? Emily laughed, surprised by her mother's perceptiveness. He didn't buy it, Mum. I bought it for myself. Maria said, clearly unconvinced. I just hope you're not getting into trouble. Rich men only bring trouble for poor girls. Details. The words echoed in Emily's mind as she changed in her room. Her mother, with all her practical wisdom, had identified the very heart of the problem. She was falling for someone who represented everything she had built her defenses against. The next day, Emily arrived at the bank determined to maintain a professional distance. But when Khalil showed up at lunchtime, asking just to talk, she found herself saying yes before reason could intervene. They walked through Central Park, talking about dreams and fears with an intimacy that grew with each encounter. Khalil told her about sleepless nights, planning how to reform labor practices in his companies, about his vision of a more humane capitalism that his father considered dangerous naivety. Emily talked about her dream of creating a consultancy that would help small American businesses reach international markets, of being the bridge between worlds she knew well, but that rarely connected. I could help, Khalil said suddenly. Financing, contacts, expertise? No, Emily replied immediately, stopping in the middle of the path. That's exactly what I can't accept. Why not? Because if you helped me, I would never know if I succeeded on my own merit, or because I'm whatever we are to each other. Khalil stopped in front of her, gently taking her face in his hands. Emily, you are the most capable person I have ever met. Any success you achieve will be exclusively yours. The sincerity in his voice almost broke her defenses. Almost. You don't understand, she whispered. All my life, people have assumed I didn't deserve to be where I was, that I got things because of my looks, because of luck, because of anything but competence. I can't. I won't give them a reason. In that moment, Khalil fully understood the extraordinary woman he was falling in love with. And he also understood that winning her would be the hardest battle he had ever faced. Not against her, but against a world that constantly questioned the value of people like Emily, forcing them to prove repeatedly that they deserved to exist in the spaces they occupied. As they walked back to the bank, neither of them noticed the freelance photographer who had captured several intimate images of them together, images that would be on social media before sunset, starting the scandal that would change their lives forever. The scandal exploded on a Monday morning like a devastating hurricane. Emily woke up to dozens of messages on her phone, and her mother, standing in her bedroom doorway with the local newspaper in her hands, her face marked by a mixture of confusion and concern she had never seen before. Emily, what is this? Maria showed her the front page, where a photo of her and Khalil walking in the park took up half the space, accompanied by the headline, Billionaire Arab Heirs Romance, with a local barista. Emily's blood ran cold as she read the first lines of the article, which speculated on hidden motives and financial interest with a cruelty that cut like a blade. Even worse were the comments on social media, where people who had never met her pontificated on her strategy to catch a millionaire. When she arrived at the bank, she found a full-blown circus. Reporters swarmed the entrance, employees whispered in the hallways, and Mark Thompson watched her with a malicious grin that made it clear how much he was enjoying the situation. Director Henry Montgomery called her into his office immediately. Emily, do you understand the delicate position this puts our institution in? He said, clearly embarrassed. We have to maintain our image of seriousness and professionalism. I didn't do anything wrong, she replied, lifting her chin with the same determination that had always sustained her. Technically, no, Henry agreed, but public perception. I think it's best you take an unpaid leave of absence until this situation resolves itself. The humiliation was complete. Emily left the bank through the back to avoid the press, but the photographs had already spread across all platforms. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists, curious onlookers, and even people she hadn't spoken to in years, wanting details of the love story of the century. It was Khalil who found her at home that afternoon. He had dodged the press and appeared at her door with his face marked by the same tension she felt. When Maria opened the door and came face to face with the man from the photographs, her expression hardened visibly. "Mom, this is Khalil," Emily said when she came into the living room. Maria looked him up and down with the evaluative gaze that every mother perfects. "The famous billionaire," she said, not hiding her skepticism. "I hope you have a good explanation for this whole mess." Khalil, surprisingly, addressed her directly. "Mrs. Carter, I know I have no right to ask for your trust, but I can assure you that my feelings for your daughter are genuine. I never intended to cause her trouble." "But you did," Maria retorted with her characteristic frankness. "And now what? Are you going back to your country and leaving her here to deal with the consequences?" The question hit Khalil like a punch to the gut because it echoed exactly what he had spent the night thinking about. His family was exerting maximum pressure for his immediate return. His father had made it clear that each additional day in the States was interpreted as a direct challenge to family authority. The marriage arrangements were being fast-tracked, and his presence was required for the formalities. "I need to talk to Emily alone," he said, looking at her with an intensity that made her heart race. In the small backyard of the house, away from Maria's attentive ears, Khalil took Emily's hands in his. "My family's calling me back. Tomorrow." Emily felt the ground give way beneath her feet, but she kept her voice steady. "I expected this." "Come with me," he said suddenly, the words tumbling out before he could weigh the implications. "What?" "Come with me, to Dubai, to London, wherever you want. We can start your consultancy there. We can build something together." The offer was all too tempting, the perfect solution to all the problems surrounding her. But Emily shook her head slowly. "I can't abandon my mother, and I can't start my adult life by running away from my problems." "Then I'll stay," Khalil said, with a determination that surprised her. "I'll renounce everything and stay here with you. And you'll blame me for the rest of your life for destroying your family." "For making you give up everything?" Emily asked with tears in her eyes. "No, Khalil, you have responsibilities that go beyond the two of us." The conversation turned into the most painful discussion either of them had ever had. Khalil argued that true love was worth any sacrifice, while Emily insisted that true love didn't require people to destroy their identities. When he finally left that night, both were shattered, but Emily remained steadfast. The next 3 months were the hardest of Emily's life. Unemployed and publicly branded as the barista who tried to catch a billionaire, she faced closed doors and accusatory looks wherever she went. But gradually, her natural resilience began to show. She used her savings to start small freelance consulting projects, working from home and slowly proving that her competence was real. She was just starting to rebuild her life when she received the call that would change everything. It was Frederick Collins, director of one of the country's largest agribusiness companies. "Ms. Carter, I have an interesting proposal. We are expanding into the Middle East and need someone with your profile. Khalil al-Mansouri told us you would be perfect to lead this project." Emily's heart soared at the sound of his name. "Khalil spoke to you?" "He approached us 3 months ago with a joint venture proposal. During the negotiations, he mentioned an exceptional American consultant he knew. I had no idea it was the famous tabloid barista until we looked up your name. Frankly, after talking with you, I understand why he was impressed." 2 weeks later, Emily was at JFK International Airport, boarding a flight to Dubai as the Director of International Expansion for Collins Agribusiness. Her mother had cried at their farewell. But there was pride in her tears. She finally understood that her daughter was following her destiny. Khalil was waiting for her at the Dubai airport. 3 months had passed, but when their eyes met, it was as if time hadn't existed. He was different. There was a new maturity in his face, a determination that wasn't there before. "You came," he said, as if he couldn't believe it. "I came to work," Emily corrected, but her smile contradicted the formality of her words. "I have a lot to tell you," Khalil said as they walked. "I broke off the engagement. I confronted my family. It wasn't easy, but I made them understand that some things are not negotiable." Emily stopped in the middle of the corridor. "And your inheritance, your position?" "I earned a respect I didn't have before," he replied. "When they saw that I was willing to lose everything for my principles, when they saw it wasn't just a whim, but a conviction, it changed the dynamic. I am still the heir. I still have responsibilities, but now I also have a voice." The following months were ones of careful reconstruction. Emily established herself in Dubai, creating a consultancy that quickly gained recognition for its innovative approach. Khalil courted her in the traditional way she deserved: dinners, long conversations, respect for the boundaries she set. His family gradually got to know her. It wasn't easy. There was resistance, prejudices to overcome, traditions to be questioned. But Emily earned respect through professional competence and personal dignity. When it became clear that she was not an opportunist, but an extraordinary woman who had genuinely captured Khalil's heart, the barriers began to fall. The marriage proposal happened a year later on a private beach in Dubai at sunset. Khalil knelt with a ring that had belonged to his grandmother, not the biggest or most expensive, but the one with the most history and meaning. "Emily Carter," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you taught me that love is not about ease. It's about choosing someone every day, even when it's hard. Will you spend the rest of your life choosing me?" Emily's answer was a yes, whispered through tears of happiness. The wedding took place 6 months later, in a ceremony that celebrated both their cultures. Maria, proud in her new dress, walked her daughter down the aisle, where Khalil waited for her with a smile that lit up his entire face. During the vows, Emily looked at the man who had faced his own family for her, who had respected her boundaries and supported her dreams without ever trying to control her. "Khalil," she said, her voice firm and clear, "you taught me that sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards. I promise to choose you every day, in the easy times and the hard, because together we are stronger than any obstacle." When they kissed to seal their union, the crowd erupted in applause. Among the guests, Mark Thompson, who had been invited by Emily in a gesture of forgiveness that surprised everyone, watched with a mixture of regret and admiration. Years later, when they told their story to their children, Khalil and Emily always emphasized that true love hadn't been the hardest part. It had been learning to love themselves enough to believe they deserved to be chosen, and that sometimes the greatest transformations begin with the simplest gestures, like a brave woman whispering in the ear of an arrogant manager that the man before him deserved respect. Their life together was not a fairy tale. It was something better. It was real. It was built day by day. It was proof that when two people truly choose each other, they can create a world where their differences become strengths, where their dreams multiply, and where love becomes the foundation of something even greater than themselves. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.